Welcome, folks, to another episode of The Bible Show. My name is Sam. Joining me is Will, and we are in our last episode in the life of Abraham. We're in Genesis 25, and we are about to close the chapter on Abraham, which has been a long time coming.
Yeah, it's been a fun ride.
It is, and Abraham is one of these figures, like, before we jump into today's episode, just to give you some perspective on how important he is in the story of redemption. Like, he is the one that God comes to give the promise that a seed is coming that's going to redeem all the nations of the world. And so everybody in the Old Testament is looking back to this promise that was given to Abraham that will be passed down to the generations to follow. But Abraham is the first guy that gets it specifically. Before that, it was kind of broadly given to all of humanity, but now God is working through a single family. And so when you get to the New Testament, let's just look at a couple of statistics here. Abraham's name is mentioned 73 times in the New Testament.
Wow.
So there's three figures that get mentioned more than anyone else. It's Moses, David, and Abraham. And Abraham is considered like he's the covenant. We're looking to become the heirs of Abraham's promise. And so he's mentioned all over the place, right? At the time of Jesus' birth, the Israelites had been waiting 2,000 years for this promise to be fulfilled, which, by the way, if you're wondering how long until Jesus comes back and asking all those questions, like, okay, God waited 2,000 years for the first coming.
Yeah.
Well, we're at 2,000 years since Jesus, right? So in terms of waiting, this is not abnormal in the Bible. Like, God, thousands of years, he's all right with it, right? So the same time period, and when you get to the birth, when the angel Gabriel comes to Mary and says, the Messiah is coming through you, Mary, listen to what her response is when she praises God. She praises him for remembering to be merciful to Abraham and his descendants. So, like, when Mary, 2,000 years after Abraham is pregnant, she's like, you remembered Abraham. You kept your promise. So like, all of the Old Testament is building on God's promise to these guys. Zechariah, John the Baptist's dad, praised God for his faithfulness to remember his holy covenant, the oath he swore to his father Abraham. So when Mary gets visited, when Zechariah gets visited, what do they see this as? The fulfillment to
Abraham.
To the promise to Abraham. So, like, this is a big deal. This guy that we have just studied is setting up all of this that's coming toward the coming of the Messiah. So when you go through the New Testament, in one encounter when Jesus is having with the Jewish religious leaders, what does he say to them? He says, your father Abraham rejoiced at the thought of seeing my day. In other words, God promised a seed that was going to bless all the nations on earth. And Abraham's going, oh, I can't wait. That's going to be amazing. But then Jesus says he saw it and was glad. And you're left to go, what in the world does that mean? Abraham couldn't wait to see the coming of the Messiah, and he saw it, past tense, and he was glad. What does that mean? That means that when Abraham died, he went to glory, and guess who he saw?
Jesus.
He saw the seed that would come in flesh later on. And think about that, how mind-trippy that is. Yeah. He goes and sees a God that is going to become a man in a lineage that Abraham is putting forth, and he saw it and was glad. And so that's a wild thing. Here's another one where Abraham comes up, where Jesus says to these same religious leaders 2 verses later, he says, before Abraham was born, I am. What's weird about that statement?
Because it feels like Jesus wasn't born until 2,000 years later.
That's right. So before Abraham was even born, before the promise, before anything, I am. And what's weird about I am? What's significant?
Yahweh.
That's Yahweh. That's the name of God. And so what he's saying is, even before Abraham was born, like, I exist. I am. Not I was, not I will be. But before Abraham was born, I was already. And when he's saying this to the Jewish religious leaders, what is that? I mean, he's saying, I'm God.
Yeah.
I'm God. Like, before he was born, I already existed, though I had not become flesh and come into this world. And so now when you read the New Testament, pay attention to how often it mentions this person, Abraham. By faith, we become heirs of the covenant, heirs of the promise to Abraham. When you are baptized, you become the sons and daughters of Abraham. Like, it is all over the New Testament. And so we're coming into Genesis 25, where Abraham is coming to an end and he is going to die. And we read kind of his eulogy here at the very end. And starting chapter 25, verse 1, Abraham took another wife. Nobody ever knows this.
Yeah.
Like, because you just assume, like, okay, he had Isaac with Sarah. It's game over. That's the end of the story. But he takes another wife after the death of Sarah, whose name was Keturah. And she bore him, brace yourself, bunch of names, Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. Jokshan fathered Sheba and Dedan. The sons of Dedan were Ashurim, Letushim, and Luimim. The sons of Midian were Ephah, Epher, Hanak, Abida, and Elda. Why is the Bible giving you all these names?
I mean, I think it's a timing thing too. Like, this took a while.
It takes a while. And what it's telling you is, what is God's promise to Abraham? Look up, Abraham.
Yeah, descendants will be as numerous as the stars.
Your descendants are going to be just crazy numerous. And here you have Abraham coming in for a landing, and the Bible wants to be like, he had these kids, and they had those kids, and those kids. And it's just like, all right, enough with the names already. I mean, you're intentionally going through that, being like, all right, we get it. He had a bunch of kids. And all these children were of Keturah. Abraham gave all that he had to Isaac. So he's having all of these children, and yet all of the inheritance, all of the wealth, all the servants, everything that he has goes to Isaac. But before you think that he's just like, oh, I'm having kids and don't care about them. But to the sons of his concubines, meaning Hagar and Keturah, Abraham gave gifts. And while he was still living, he sent them away from his son Isaac eastward to the east country. So what do you do with that? How do you feel about that?
Good. I mean, I think Abraham was generous. I wouldn't doubt that the gifts he gave was worthwhile to them.
So we know that they're generous enough to where all of these lines become their own kingdoms. So like when he sends the Midian away, it's not like, good luck out in the wilderness.
No, it's a real starter package.
Right. And Keturah is there, like Midian is going to become the Midianites. Like, they are going to become a massive kingdom. And the Midianites, you'll see when Moses' wife? Yeah, that's right. Okay. Moses will come out, and Jethro's a Midianite. So, like, they've become a massive kingdom. And so he's giving little starter kits where he's like, hey, my line is going to produce great nations, a great nation, but great nations, many peoples. And God is like, okay, yeah. And here I'm blessing you with an abundance of wealth, and you're going to send them away, and you're going to send them away, and you're going to send them away. But only one son receives the bulk of everything when Abraham dies. It's all left to Isaac, right? He has given them their money and sent them out, but Isaac gets everything when he dies. And there's something interesting about this that you see in a pattern, and I think it sets up some paranoia later in the book of Genesis, where the chosen son always gets the inheritance, and the other sons are sent to go establish other nations elsewhere, right? So, like, think about Abraham. What happens to Ishmael?
He's gone.
Oh, he's taken care of. He's given we're going to see today, Ishmael still loves Abraham. He comes to honor him at his death. But he's given a starter kit, a massive amount of wealth, and it's like, okay, go found your own nation. Go build your own kingdom. With all of Keturah's sons, right? 6 sons. Here's your abundance of wealth. Go found your kingdoms and go out. But Isaac alone is going to stay here. Then Isaac's going to have 2 kids, and what happens? You have Jacob and you have Esau. Which one is going to be from the promised line?
Jacob.
Well, Esau then, okay, here, you go found your own kingdom, and he goes out and founds the Edomites. And so, but only Jacob is left there. So when you get to Jacob's 12 sons, and dad is showing lots of favor to Joseph, what do all the other sons probably think?
He's going to get it all.
Yeah. Well, we're going to be like Ishmael. We're going to be like Keturah's sons. Or we're going to be like Esau, where it's like, okay, the one who gets it all, and we get sent off. So there's already jealousy and insecurity there, because the pattern is only one gets everything. But when you get to Jacob's sons, the 12 of them become the 12 nations or 12 tribes of Israel, and everything is going to change. But the Bible is getting you to see lots of kids are coming out of this line. All right, verse 7. These are the days of the years of Abraham's life, 175 years. So after he has Isaac, he's 100. Another 75 years.
That's kind of crazy. You don't
So
think about
he's one of the last of the patriarchs that lives like crazy long. And so it says, Abraham breathed his last and died at a good old age, an old man and full of years. That idea of full of years is like he's completed everything that he was called to do. His life is full, and was gathered to his people. Now listen to this, because this is kind of comforting. Verse 9, Isaac and Ishmael, his sons, buried him in the cave of Machpelah in the field of Ephron, the son of Zohar the Hittite, east of Mamre. So what's significant about that? There's a couple things that should jump out at you here.
I mean, they came together to do that. That's interesting that Ishmael didn't be like, no, I'm not going to bury this guy who kicked me out.
Yeah.
Or I don't hate you.
When Ishmael hears that his father died, he's not like, oh, yeah, you're the
Good.
Yeah,
Good
right.
riddance.
Yeah, what you did to me. No, he appreciates his dad. He honors his dad. He goes back to bury his dad. And by the way, buries his dad in the very same cave where Sarah, who had sent him away, was buried. And so in this, you see, like, whatever these last 75 years of Abraham's life were, they were redemptive in nature. Like, his son Ishmael doesn't hate him. The sons of Keturah, they don't hate him. Like, he's considered noble. He's a good man. He took care of them. He wasn't just like, all right, I love Isaac. Y'all, go die in the wilderness. I don't care about you.
And his sons are kind of old at this stage.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So that's interesting, too. I've never thought about them as being, like, in their 70s or 80s.
Yeah. Ishmael would be in his 80s, maybe early 90s by this point.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild. So anyway, like, here you get all this story, and it says that he's buried at the same place where Sarah was buried, which is beautiful. The field that Abraham purchased from the Hittites, and there Abraham was buried with Sarah, his wife. After the death of Abraham, God blessed Isaac, his son. So it's like, okay, now we've had this zoom out of all these kids being born. Now let's focus back in, because God's redemptive blessing, the line of the Messiah, is going to come through Isaac. And Isaac settled at Be'er Lahai Roi. Remember what that place is? This is the place that Hagar was when God came and said, no, I see you, I hear you, you're mine, come back. And so it's interesting that that's the place that Isaac settles, the place where God heard Hagar. So it's like all these things that feel redemptive. Like Isaac doesn't look at that place and be like, oh, that's where Hagar, because that's Ishmael's mom. You don't sense any of that. Like it feels redeemed in some sense here. And these are the generations of Ishmael. And here comes another bunch of names. Abraham's son, whom Hagar the Egyptians, Sarah's servant, bore to Abraham. These are the names of the sons of Ishmael, named in the order of their birth. You want to give it a shot?
No, I don't.
Nebaioth, the firstborn of Ishmael, Kedar, Adbeel, it's just rough. Mibsam,
It looks like
Mishma,
Mibsam.
Duma, Masa, Hadad, Tema, Jetur, Naphish, and Kedemah. These are the sons of Ishmael, and these are their names by their villages and their encampments, 12 princes according to their tribes. What jumps out at you there?
That God also accepted the promise to Ishmael.
Mm-hmm. He's going to make them a great nation. Yeah. And the other part of that is, how many are there?
12.
So
It's like the dueling tribes.
What's going to come through Isaac and Jacob?
12 sons.
12 sons. And so here you get what it's showing you is God is not looking at one saying, in an earthly sense, all of my favors here. Now, from the redemptive covenant line, it's all through Isaac and Jacob. But God is blessing Ishmael.
Yeah, the generosity.
12 princes, mighty nation. And these are the years of the life of Ishmael, 137 years. And he breathed his last and died and was gathered to his people. And they settled, and then we get a map of where everybody's going to be. From Havilah to Shur, which is south of Israel, down toward Egypt, which is opposite of Egypt in the direction of Assyria. And he settled, hear this, over against all his kinsmen. What's that mean?
Yeah, he's a wild donkey of a man. He's going to be against everybody, and he was.
Yeah, the literal thing, the wild donkey that dwells out in these arid, desolate regions and is super territorial, like that's him. He is the wild donkey of a man. He's living up to it, and he's fighting anyone who intrudes on his turf. He's very territorial, which, by the way, is still that whole region is like sharp elbows and not sharing territory well and fighting over this for 4,000 years since this. It feels like this has been the story of that region. And so right there, you come to the end of Abraham, and you see that he has honored all of his promises, not just for Isaac's sake, but also for Ishmael's sake, have all come true. God has kept his promises, and now we close the chapter on Abraham. Anything, what out of all the life of Abraham, what about his story sticks out to you the most? Like what sears into your brain and heart?
I mean, just that he messed up. He was a failure at times, and I think the whole idea that God didn't give up on him and just restart is always reassuring to me.
Mm-hmm.
That God, after each mistake, didn't like condone it. He wasn't like, hey, that was great that you tried to give away Sarah again. He was like, no, that's wrong, but I'm not giving up on you.
Yeah.
And Abraham did have a tenacity to the promise in the end.
Yeah.
There was a part of him that flicked a switch that's like, okay, I think I believe this now, which took a long time, which is very helpful, I think.
Yeah.
To be like, oh, God put up with a lot before you were like, oh, I think I get it now.
Yeah. It was like a lot of failures before Abraham's like, those failures were used to grow his faith. Like to where it was, like you said, the switch went up and he's like, wait a minute. Yeah, I do believe this. God is going to make good on this promise. And so I agree with that. Would be the one thing that jumps out at me. That and the fact that God is the only hero of the story.
Yeah.
Like we don't look at Abraham going, this is our guy where our hope is. No, he does some heroic stuff. We should honor him. He's wonderful. We call him Father Abraham, but he is the hero because God refused to let go of him, period. So God, in the sense, is the true hero of what makes Abraham heroic. And then the other part of that is I love that for the sake of his promise to Abraham, all these people, regardless of whether they're believers or followers of him or not, they get blessed.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not like Ishmael's out there going, yep, I earned it. I get my 12 sons and my mighty nations. Like, why does that happen? Because God was faithful to his promise to Abraham. And so when you think about that, like the whole story, it's like this inherited promise that none of them deserve. But that's our story, right? Like, why are we embraced? Because of God's promise to Abraham, God's promise to David, God's promise to Jesus, God's promise to the generations before us. And that's why, like, God's covenantal faithfulness that works through generations that are perhaps thousands of years in front of us. And yet when God looks at us, it's like, I'm going to keep my promise to Will and Sam because of my love for Jesus.
Yeah.
Because of my love for Abraham, which is kind of a wild thing that we're on the train of the robe of his promise, being carried along. And there's something cool about that to me.
And I think this read-through, I thought about maybe being a father. This read-through has been different. Because Abraham, with all of his failures, he seems like he was a rather successful father when we got to Genesis 22. Because when he's going to sacrifice Isaac at least trusts his dad, but I think he really trusts God. And I've been thinking, just as a father, like, what did he do? Because we don't have details of his parenting strategies. There's no books he read. And it was just, I think Isaac saw that his dad finally believed in a resurrection. And that's the way he saw everything. So that's the way Isaac saw everything. So for me, it's like, okay, how will my kids get that? Because, there's strategies. And I don't know. I have a toddler and a 3-month-old. So it's everything's up in the air.
Just keep them alive at that point.
Yeah. We're just trying to be asleep sometimes. But it is like, okay, will my kids see my theology, my beliefs played out in such a manner they go, wait, I think my dad believes in resurrection. Like, that's fascinating to me. Like, will Everett ever grow up and be able to verbalize, like, oh, this is why my dad does this, because he believes that there's a resurrection at the end.
So we play down how much kids absorb at that age.
I know she
It's
absorbs
a
everything.
ton. It's a lot. And what they do is when they see, we work with a Christian school here, and I used to be a head of school. And one of the things that I would tell people that the New Testament actually talks about is Paul writes this. He says, you are a letter written from Christ, right? Like your heart is a letter written to unbelievers. Everybody you come across, they're looking at you as if you are a letter from Christ written to whomever you come in contact with. And so like a 2-year-old in preschool or a 4-year-old, they can't read yet.
Yeah.
But they look at you and they hear you talk about Jesus, and so they interpret Jesus by the way you live, which is a terrifying thing.
Yeah.
And I remember when we first came here, my son Jacob was 4, he was 2, and Caleb was 4, and so we were going to chapels, and if you remember, Miss Dee Dee would get up and she would lead worship, and everybody would be singing and dancing, and so much joy and everything else. And there was a time where we played superheroes. They were young, and Caleb's like, I want to be Spider-Man, and I don't forget what they told me I had to be, but Jacob says, to be Miss Dee Dee.
Uh-huh.
And it was like, wait, what? Say that again? I'm to be Miss Dee Dee. And like he was looking at her ability to command joyful worship and how everybody would get so fired up, these little kids all around him. And to him, in his little mind at 2, it's like, that's a superpower.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, like,
she's a hero, yeah.
What an impression she's made on this mind of a 2-year-old. How much more, like the teacher that's with him all day, how much more the person that picks him up and loves him and laughs with him and giggles with him and shows him patience and mercy and all those things. Like they're learning so much about God by interpreting the actions of the people who claim to love God and live by his name. And that's a heavy burden. But, at the same time, Isaac knows Abraham's a mess, but he sees that Abraham's life has been made beautiful because he leaned into the mercies and covenantal faithfulness of God and believed in the resurrection. And that's what we're called to do. Yeah, cool. And that will make our kids look and go, whoa, there's something that is super heroic about my messy dad, and the God who's behind him. And they see that. Kids are excellent lie detectors. Yeah. And for whatever it is, it's like you said, Isaac, when we meet him, he's praying, he's meditating, he can't, he's trusting, he's willing to lay down on the funeral pyre in Genesis 22 and trust his dad and his dad's God. Like, it's pretty phenomenal parenting story. And there's not a lot about Abraham's, like, don't be a husband like him. Yeah. But when you look at the fruit of what he did fathering in all those silent years that we don't know what's going on, as Isaac's growing up.
It's really cool.
Something went right. Something went right. So yeah, I love Abraham. He's a really wonderful person, story, and I love that his story is just overloaded with messages of grace and mercy, because it's like, oh, thank you. Yeah. So then you get to verse 19 and everything shifts.
Handoff, yeah.
But it shifts in a weird way. So if you're like, gosh, I can't keep track of all these names in the Bible and I get confused, well, it like skips Isaac and then goes back to Isaac. So
it closes out Ishmael and Abraham, and then we're kind of like reversing back to the story of Isaac.
Right. But Isaac is like, okay, here's Isaac's kids. And then you jump to Jacob and Esau, which would be generation 3. So you have Abraham, then you have Isaac, then you have Jacob and Esau. But then right after the death of Abraham, it's like, okay, now Isaac has some kids. And you're like, wait a minute, I want to learn some more about Isaac. Like, why does Isaac not get enough ink? Next chapter 26, so next week, we'll talk a little bit about Isaac, but then it jumps right back to Jacob again. And Isaac, of all the patriarchs, gets the least ink. And I don't know why that is. Maybe he's too good. Maybe he's more righteous than the rest of them. So it's like, he did stuff right. Moving right along. Yeah. I don't know why that is, but Isaac doesn't get a lot.
Yeah, it gives us like Isaac's birth and the snapshot of the sacrifice, and then when he gets married at 40. Mm-hmm. So that is a quick, like, just 3 big events. They're just like, they happened.
Yeah, right. And he has kids at 60. It's like they're flying through his life. But another thing that's interesting is if you think of Isaac in terms of, his willingness to lay down his life, his prayer, all the godliness, and he'll have some mess ups too. But do you wonder, like, when Abraham is told, through your seed, all the nations on earth are going to be blessed, like your descendants are going to bring about the salvation of the world. Like, have you ever stopped to think that maybe Isaac was like, is that me? You ever think of that? Like,
I mean, if you heard a story, you would obviously think, like, that's me.
100%. Obviously. 100%. That's why, like, when he goes to Moriah, like, is he thinking, all right, maybe this is it?
That's a real personality test, because that's either crushing to you or so uplifting.
I imagine it's both.
Yeah, because it's crushing to be like, I have to carry the promise. Mm-hmm. But it's also uplifting because, like, hey, God didn't forget my dad, and he kind of stunk, so he's not going to forget me.
It's true. And, like, man, what is in store for me? Yeah. Like, what's cool about my life? What is he going to So when something crazy like, hey, sacrifice your son on Moriah, Isaac's like, maybe this is what I'm meant to do. And you just see, like, the pressures of that. And it's not until we see, he has sons and then God announces the promise is going to fall on one of them that it's like Isaac can finally go, okay, it's not me. Oh, maybe it's them. Maybe it's going to be Esau or Jacob, which, good grief, they're both going to be super messy. And the Bible gets even messier than what it was with Abraham, believe it or not.
Yeah,
and yet God's promise and faithfulness is there. But let's jump right in, because this is a wild, kind of weird birth story, but there's something to it that's profound. So verse 19, chapter 25, it says, "These are the generations of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham fathered Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel of Aramean and Paddan, the sister of Laban the Aramean, to be his wife. And Isaac prayed to the Lord for his wife because she was barren." And all of a sudden, I want you to stop, because this chapter and the next chapter, it's like you're going to see that Isaac's life becomes almost carbon copy of everything that God put Abraham through. God's like, "Isaac, I want you to experience the same things. I want you to see how I move in the midst of struggle and doubt and barrenness and trial and failure." And Isaac's going to walk almost the same identical road as his father. I think he walks a little better, but he's going to walk so many of the same things, starting with barrenness, right? So here you've brought Rebekah to me. I mean, what do we remember about Rebekah? Like, okay, Abraham waits till he's 40 to find him a wife, which is really bizarre and different in the ancient world.
Sends a servant.
Sends the servant. And what do we know about her? She's beautiful. Yeah. She's a virgin. She comes from a family of wealth.
She's generous. She's giving.
She's generous and giving. She waters his camels and does it. She's got a servant's heart. Like, she is this incredible woman. She checks every one of the boxes of what you would hope to find in a wife. Like, just incredible. And she's barren.
Yes.
So it's like all of that beauty. And by the way, the promise is what? Like, through your seed, the nations of the earth are going to be blessed. And here God has thrown up barrenness as an impediment to this again. And it's like, wait a minute, what does that mean? And so Isaac knows the only hope for this. What did Abraham do? Well, they scheme, and well, maybe we should try the servant. And, what does Isaac do?
Praise.
He prayed to the Lord for her.
There it is.
Gosh, like, he learned from his dad. Like, he learned that's God is the answer to this. It's not going to be through my scheming. God, please, it's going to be you. And by the way, Abraham has to wait 25 years, and you hear all the ups and downs and stumbles and mess that Abraham makes. It's not like Isaac has to wait just a little bit. Mm-hmm. We're going to see he's 60 when she finally gives birth to kids, which means she's barren for 20 years. Yeah. That's almost as long as Abraham had to walk through. And so with this, you get this incredible story of faith, and he's trusting the Lord with it, right? But the Lord granted his prayer, and Rebekah, his wife, conceived, and the children struggled together within her. What do you think of that?
I don't know. Having twins seems crazy, though.
Yeah.
If they're brawling in your womb already.
Didn't you say that, like, the first pregnancy was crazy? Like, your daughter was
Everett was a
barbarian in the womb?
I couldn't imagine having two of them, because they'd, like, look for her heart. They'd, like, look for her heartbeat, and you just hear, like, a whoosh. She was just, like, moving around the amniotic fluid, and we're like, okay, I guess she's good.
Yeah, we had, so 4 for Laura, and some of them would be totally common. Then other ones, like, you would see the heel or the elbow go through the skin of the belly, and you're like, that's just weird.
Laura always says one of your kids, like, kicked her in a way that, like, it, like, was real pain.
Yeah, hurt. Like, I forget which one it was. But anyway, so here you have the children struggling together within her. Now, one of the ways all of this is meant to be taken as an omen, it's not like... Some people read this like they're battling and scheming and working up, battle plans in the womb.
Punching each other.
No. But they're so vigorous in the womb that the omen is they're struggling against each other. This is a sign of what's to come. They're not in there volitionally, plotting against each other, but it's a sign of what's to come. And they looked for signs everywhere. They named their children things that were to be kind of omens of what was to come. Like, they really believed and those kinds of things. And so she said, if it is thus, why is this happening to me? Like, if we are bringing about the chosen line, why in the world are they struggling? Why does everything feel so off? There's something turmoil in me. Why is this happening to me? So what does she do? She went to inquire of the Lord. What does this house sound like?
They're praying all the time.
They're praying all the time. She's meditating before she meets Isaac. Isaac's praying for her and meditating for her. Now they're having trouble, and they run right to the Lord, and they're praying and inquiring of the Lord. And so what does the Lord say to her? and this is wild, 2 nations are in your womb. Now, we read right past that because, like, if you read the Bible, it's just like, okay, that's Bible talk. But here you have 2 kids. It's Jacob and Esau.
Yeah.
What does God see when he looks at Jacob and Esau?
The whole future.
2 nations. So in that one life, he sees millions, right? How many descendants of Jacob will there have been throughout all of time? Millions.
Yeah.
Millions and millions and millions. The Jewish people, right? How many people will come through Esau with all the Edomites? I mean, King Herod and all, like, again, hundreds of thousands at least. And so when God sees these individuals, he's not bound by time going, I wonder what's going to happen with them. He sees the end. And he looks at a baby and says, nations. I see every single citizen that will ever come through that bloodline in one moment.
Yeah, as a fetus, which is crazy. Like, he's not even waiting until they're born. He's like, no, in the womb.
Yeah. Think about that. Like, do you ever think about looking at your kids, like all of the lineage that's possible there? How many hundreds, thousands, millions, whatever may come from your children? And how one life, just the little things that you do to steer where your child's heart is ultimately aimed could impact the future to that level. And that's what God is saying. 2 nations are in your womb. He's not playing around here. And that's all. Think about the pro-life implications of that.
Yeah.
Like, God doesn't look at the fetus and go, oh, it's potential life. He not only sees it as life, he sees all of the future life that is buried in this unborn child. Like, this is far more sacred than what we, even in the pro-life movement, think, oh, it's a life. God's like, no, there's nations there. If you were to take out one of those babies, you wouldn't just be taking out that baby. You'd be taking out nations. This would be genocidal to take out that line. Now, all of a sudden, it's like, whoa, God... According to God's eyes, it's not even just a life, it's a nation. That's wild. So 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. So what does that mean?
That's wild, though.
Yeah,
For
totally
this time.
wild.
I mean, the older serve the younger. That's not possible. That's not how it goes.
Yeah, so everything about this, the customs are the firstborn son, primogeniture is what it's called. Like, the firstborn son always gets the stuff. The firstborn son is always the one that is going to carry on the name, gets all the inheritance rights, gets the double portion. Everything about that is like, of course, it's going to be whichever one comes out first. That's the one. And God comes and says, no, it's going to be the underdog. It's going to be the weaker. It's going to be the later, the younger. That's the one that's going to get it. And you think through all of the Bible, and what do you find? Like, how many firstborns are the ones that are like, oh, they got the pole position. This is the one that God is working through. And this is really sad news for firstborns out there. It's not a lot, right?
Yeah.
It's Adam's children. Is it Cain? No, it's not. It's not, and it's not Abel either. It's going to be Seth. When you jump to Abraham, it's not Ishmael, it's Isaac. When you jump to Isaac, it's not going to be Esau, it's going to be Jacob. When Jacob has his sons, it's the fourthborn, Judah, that's going to carry on the promise. It's, David is not a firstborn, Solomon's not a firstborn. You walk through the story of redemption and all the lineage of Jesus, and you're hard pressed to find firstborns in that. Why? What is God doing? Why does he do this?
I mean, it's kind of the gospel. The undeserving get what the deserving should get.
100%. When Jesus tells the parable of the prodigal son, what is that all about?
Yeah, the younger son messes up the whole time and then gets rewarded for it, it seems. And
Yeah.
the older son, we're left at the end of that parable being like, how did he respond?
Yeah. So, the firstborn's like, what in the world? He blew it. He was out wasting all the inheritance. I should get it. I'm the firstborn. And again and again throughout the Bible, God's like, no, it's to the far off. It's to the outcast. It's to the undeserving. And by the way, as a firstborn, you can be that, but you have to humble yourself and recognize you don't deserve it.
Yeah.
Right? So Jesus will be described as the firstborn of all creation, who earns and deserves everything, right? And what does he do with everything he's earned and deserved?
Sacrifices it.
He gives it away. Like, that's the path to God. And so for whatever reason, I think that's it. God is always giving the blessing and the promise to the younger, to the weaker.
But
Go ahead.
What a message you don't want as a mother.
Right?
Like, you're like, oh, this would be complex anyways, raising twins, and all of a sudden, God, you're going to flip everything on its head. Mm-hmm. And now, I mean, it's kind of like, how much do I make this come true, too, as the mom? Like, you have control over these kids for a while. Like,
put your thumb on the scales.
Who are you going to favor, who you're not? It's just kind of tricky.
Yep. And you're going to see in a couple chapters, it gets real tricky. Verse 24, it says, when her days to give birth were completed, behold, there were twins in her womb. And the first came out red, all his body like a hairy cloak. Like, oh boy.
What a description.
I just picture like some crazy man from the movie Braveheart, like red hair, super hairy, like the guy that's walking around with the club or whatever. Yeah. That's all I can think of when I think of Esau after that description.
Large Irish man.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Just red hair and hairy. Nice. So they called his name Esau. And so out of all this is, these names again are significant. So Esau and Edom. So the name Esau stems from a Hebrew word that can mean hairy. And then his descendants are called the Edomites. And Edom stems from a word that means red. And so the two names that come out of him, Edom and Esau, are hairy and red. So, congratulations.
What a calling card, yeah.
Congratulations. That's something you should be really excited about. All right, so anyway, he comes out red, body like a hairy cloak, so they called his name Esau. Afterward, his brother came out with his hand holding Esau's heel, so his name was called Jacob. And so they see these names, again, like omens, these actions like omens. And so it says Isaac was 60 years old when she bore him, so 20 years of barrenness. But let's stop for a moment and talk about this whole idea that Jacob is grabbing the heel. How does that hit your ears as a 21st century millennial male? How does it hit your ears?
It means nothing to me.
What do you mean?
Grabbing his heel?
Yeah.
Like, other than the biblical prophecy?
Like, if you're, let's say you have twins. Morgan gets pregnant with twins.
Okay.
So your blood pressure rise. And you see the first one come out, and as the first one's coming out, the hand is reaching up and grabbing the heel. Like, it's pretty unusual, right?
That'd be weird.
Like, what do you think of that? Does that happen? If somebody told you that happened, would you be like,
Well, what did you really see?
Yeah,
a lot goes on in that labor and delivery room.
So the reality is, like, and you know this from babies, they have something called, what is it? Palmar grasp reflex. So, like, if you were to grab an object and go and lay it in a baby's hand,
just grab.
They grab. Like, it's just, if they feel it, they clamp down. And, like, it's like, woo, even for a newborn baby, like, they can grip pretty well. So the idea is, it's not that Jacob's in there scheming, going, I want to be first. Ha-ha, I'm reaching and grabbing, and I'm going to try to pull you back in. Like, that's not what we're to understand here. The Bible is not written by idiots. They recognize that babies don't have the cognitive, but the hand hits the heel and the hand naturally clenches, and they're like, that's an omen. Like that means something. This child is somebody that's trying to gain advantage at the expense of the other. And so they call his name Jacob, which in Hebrew literally means heel grabber. And so you'll hear it like supplanter or deceiver. But the idea is, kids do this all the time, where it's like, when you were a kid, did you ever have somebody tie your shoelaces together?
I mean, yeah, of course.
Why would they do that?
So I trip and fall.
So that you trip, right? Because if you're going forward and your leg is not allowed to freely move, you're going to fall, right? And so what is a heel grabber doing? It's
yanking them back.
I'm keeping you from walking. I am going to make you stumble. I'm supplanting is the word that you hear a lot. I'm supplanting your ability to move forward. I'm actively sabotaging you. But another one that we get deceiver, like even in modern language, like if I say, you're pulling my leg, what does that mean?
That you're messing around with me, you're joking around, you're lying.
You're not telling me the truth. Like, you're actively scheming to mess me up. Like, you're joking, like this is not true. And so Jacob, all of those connotations with that name, heel grabber, are there. This is somebody who's going to scheme to make someone else trip up. And he lives up to that.
Yeah, he's the most
really
confusing character in the Bible for me, for sure.
Yeah.
He's the one where it's like, at everything you're like, why are you doing it? You can't do this. You're not doing this right. But then every time he's kind of rewarded for it. Mm-hmm. So you're just like, I don't get this at all.
So I'll give you a backstory. When I first because I used to be of the school, like when we would, Sunday school classes, like you hear about the patriarchs and it's like, be like Abraham and be like Isaac. And yeah, parts of them. So when I was still in that mindset, I started writing a chapter in one of the books that's used in curriculum on Jacob. And I really dug into the text. And by the end of the chapter on Jacob, I was at the point where I told Laura, I was like, I don't think I can publish this. Like, I really don't like him. And one of my children's name is Jacob.
I'm always confused about that.
It's kind of a crazy thing. We have a bad legacy of naming our kids. I've told this before, but and probably shouldn't. Anyway, we're going there. But before we had taken Hebrew in seminary, we had a kid, named him Caleb, and come to find out that name means dog. And we had joked about in marriage, like, before we have kids, we need a dog, but we got pregnant too quickly. and so Caleb means dog. So we got our dog. Then we had Jacob and named him Jacob before we realized that this means deceiver, supplanter, someone who makes other people stumble. And it was like, all right. And then we had Leah, who is the unloved wife of Jacob, which is like probably not good to put them together in a family. But that name means exhausted. And so we take Hebrew and we're like, we've named our kids
just terrible
dog,
things.
Deceiver, and exhausted. So when we had our fourth one, Nathan means gift of God. It's better. But the purpose for that was we wanted to name them all these people that were zealous for the promise of God, that would do anything to be in the story of God's promise. And they are certainly that. But to your point, we're going to see as we unfurl the story of Jacob, he is thoroughly unlikable.
Yeah.
There's going to be times where it'll challenge your view of God, where you're like, God, this guy is too bad.
He's definitely not
I get grace. I love the fact that you chase after the outcast, but that guy's gone too far. Stop. Let him go. He needs to go away.
Because Abraham seems more foolish. He just makes mistakes in real time, and you're like, okay.
And it's through hurt.
Yeah.
And it's through wounds. Jacob will go out of his way to just really mess over people, where you're like, dude, that's totally uncool. What are you doing? And the way he treats, his kids at points, you're like, dude, that's gross. I don't want this guy on my team. And yet God says, I don't care what you think, he's on my team. And then by the end of his story, he's this redeemed, wonderful, beautiful man. And again, you're like, okay, there's a reason why God refused to give up on him.
He just wanted to happen quicker.
Yeah.
Jacob's like, please, God, fast forward.
But I promise you, God's up there looking at us going, I wish it would happen quicker. Come on. How many times do you need to learn this lesson?
I guess if you
dummy.
My life down in a book and pass it around to the world, I wouldn't be jazzed about my performance either.
Correct. That is absolutely correct. But Jacob is on another level. He's hard to like. But here's another thing, and this is probably heretical. So take this with a grain of salt. Hear it for what it is. But Jacob is going to be described as so unlikable as his story unfolds. And it got when I was having my crisis about writing this book, because I'm like, I think I'm in trouble. I don't think this is the way I'm supposed to write his story, but I don't like him. Yeah. And by the way, I love him now because I have gotten a better picture of the story. But at that moment, I was like, whoa. But when he's called heel grabber, there's only one other mention of somebody grabbing hold of a heel that comes before Jacob. Do you know who it is?
I mean, it's the promised one. Genesis 3:15.
But who is it grabbing the heel?
Oh, Satan.
Right?
Yeah, I guess that's reversed.
So here you have the promise of, here's the chosen one, right? So think of if you're Isaac, right? And it's, hey, the seed of the woman is going to crush the head of the snake, and he will stomp your head and he will strike the heel. And you're watching your kids and you're like, oh, the firstborn clearly is going to be the savior. He's going to be the chosen one. And you see Esau coming out with his head. By the way, the baby's born, the head comes out with the feet behind, and here comes the next head. And his feet are on Jacob's head, essentially. And here you see Jacob reaching up and grabbing hold of the heel. Yeah. If you're thinking big time omen symbolism and all that stuff, you're like, whoa, Jacob, I don't like that you're striking out and grabbing the heel. That's
your
weird.
Head's being crushed by a foot.
That's right. I'm not sure I like this. And by the way, his name is going to mean the one who causes you to stumble, the one who's deceptive. And what's interesting about that is it says there will be enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, right? But when is it that Jacob finally turns? His name will mean that supplanter, deceiver idea until
He wrestles God.
he wrestles with God. So there's this a contest, an enmity, a wrestling match, a struggling with God. And it's when Jacob finally he recognizes who he is and what a mess he is, that God changes his name to Israel. And what does that mean? He who struggles with God and prevails. Yeah. And so the idea is like the serpent grabber, the heel grabber, whatever. All this image is like, ooh, I don't like that. He's somebody who trips people up and causes them to stumble. He's like on everything that you hear about him is like, oh, I don't like this guy. He is on the wrong side. And yet what happens is he wrestles with God, confesses who he is, and then he becomes one who struggles against God and wins. Like what? That whole thing, struggles with God and wins. Like that's the kind of God we serve. You struggle with him long enough, like Abraham, like Isaac, like Jacob. You struggle with him long enough and you refuse to let go of him and you keep struggling with him. Guess what happens? You win.
Yeah.
You're redeemed. You get changed.
Stop struggling with all those people around you.
All the things that Jacob will do that are like echoes of devilish kind of things. Really, I mean, it's harsh, but it's true. He gets redeemed to become kind of a father of a redemptive covenant community that will bring about the salvation of the world. Like this is, who Jacob is going to become, which is pretty wonderful. All right, so verse 27, it says, when the boys grew up, Esau was a skillful hunter. Now, quick thing here, and this isn't something I like because I appreciate hunters. Hunters don't have a great track record in the Bible. No. Can you think of the last hunter?
Well, Nimrod, but he was a hunter of man. But I don't.
But that's the word. Like he's out there hunting. So Esau's a skillful hunter, a man of the field. So that's like the man's man. While Jacob was a quiet man, dwelling in tents. You get the idea that he's more studious, more of a mama's boy, if you could say that. Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. So already you see favorites.
So the dysfunction begins.
This is the great dysfunction of Isaac and Rebekah that will have generational consequences for a couple generations at least, where they show favoritism and it doesn't go well. It's going to stir hatred among their kids. It's not great parenting. But Isaac is all in for Team Esau, and Rebekah's all in for Team Jacob. And here's where the story begins to give you a hint of where these stories are going to diverge. Like, okay, Jacob comes out as the heel grabber. He's the supplanter. He's the one who's always, making others stumble is the idea. Esau's the hunter. He's the dad's boy. Isaac loves him. We haven't heard anything bad about Esau apart from the fact that he's red and hairy. Like, that's kind of weird. But verse 29, it says, once when Jacob was cooking stew, so here he is in the tents with mom, Esau came in from the field and he was exhausted. That word can mean like it's famished. I'm out of energy. I have nothing left to give. And Esau said to Jacob, let me eat some of that red stew, for I'm exhausted. It's literally like, give me a swallow of that, for I'm exhausted. I have no more energy, worn out, I'm empty. And it says, therefore his name was called Edom. So it's red hair, red skin, red stew. Everything is red for some reason. You got any reasons for that?
No idea.
All right. Verse 31, red is like usually associated with passion. I mean,
like it's anger.
Scarlet is considered unfaithfulness in the Bible. Scarlet, even scarlet letter, a red light district, like it's all unfaithfulness. I don't know if that's it. But
and at this stage, you're only in 25 of the book of the Bible. Chapter 25 of the book of the Bible, there's nothing really going on to suggest red anything.
Yeah, true. But they're like obsessed with letting us know that Esau's all about red.
He's red.
So verse 31, it says, Jacob said, sell me your birthright now. So here we go.
Which is this normal?
So in the ancient world, a father could not take, like you look at the ancient legal codes, a father could not take the birthright from the oldest son and give it to another, but that son could sell his birthright. So Jacob can't go and appeal to Isaac and be like, I want the birthright, I deserve it. He has, like, they wouldn't have been able to change it.
Okay, so what is the birthright? What do you get?
So the birthright it's very similar to the blessing. Like, You control the family. I'm the one that's the head of the household. I'm going to get the double portion of the inheritance. I'm going to be the one who controls all of our legal contracts and everything else. But assumed with that would also come the blessing, which I think that's what Jacob is more interested in, that God has said that, there's going to be mighty nation that comes, that there's going to be all the nations of the world are going to be blessed through your descendants. And right now, Jacob's looking at Esau and being like, you're that guy. I desperately want that promise of God. I would give anything to be the one that God is talking about here. And Esau is looking at all the promises of God, and what's his heart like?
Whatever.
Ugh, I hate it. You talked about whether or not that would be a burden or a blessing. Like, Esau looks at this and is like, I'm so tired of people talking to me about this. I want nothing to do with it, have zero interest in the birthright. God's promising that he's going to redeem all of humanity. Like, I don't want to be part of the story at all. Like, cut me out. I hate it. And so Jacob is like, sell me that birthright. He's probably heard Esau walking around going, oh my gosh, if somebody talks to me about this one more time. He knows that he doesn't like it probably. And so he says, sell me your birthright now. And Esau says, I'm about to die. Of what use is a birthright to me? And other places, and you'll see it later on in this chapter, it says Esau despised the birthright. Like, that word literally means like counted it as utterly worthless. He saw no value in it whatsoever. Jacob knows it, so he schemes to get that birthright. And Esau's like, whatever, I'm about to die. Who cares about a birthright? And so Jacob says, swear to me now. And so he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. And then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate and drank and rose and went his way. And it says, thus Esau despised his birthright. Now, does that sound, in the heart of God, here's something that's a very, very uncomfortable thing. The Bible, only one time that I'm aware of, speaks of God hating someone.
Yeah.
And
As
the
an
word
individual.
hatred, by the way, when we hear it in English, hatred has a different perspective than what it means in Hebrew. In Hebrew, it means like your future dies.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like you just lost everything. Like I'm no more shedding of protection and grace and all that stuff. It's like your line is cut. That's the idea of Hebrew. In fact, when in ancient Hebrew, when they used pictographs for the letters, that the two letters that come together in the Hebrew to make the word hatred are thorn and seed. In other words, well, what do you think of seed? It's your future. And what are thorns?
Curses.
It's cursing. And so it's like, because of this, your future is now cut off.
It's a
cursed.
higher
It's
level.
thorns. So it's not like, oh, I hate him. I want, like that's not, God will bless Esau. He watches over him. Like, but the covenantal line, it's cut. Like there's no redemption. There's no salvation for him. And you stop and you think, why? Like, why the harshness here? And it's like Jacob, even though he's going to be unethical, loves the promise. He'll do anything to get hold of the promise.
Yeah, it's
Confusing.
Abraham messes up, but he loves the promise, won't let go of it. Isaac messes up, but he won't let go of the promise. Esau despises the promise.
yeah.
And so
Esau seems like a moral guy throughout the story too, which is interesting.
he's presented as the moral guy, but he hates the promise of God. And what is it that triggers salvation? Is it the promise or is it the behavior?
It's a promise.
It's clearly not the behavior. Like, have you been paying attention to the last 10 chapters? Like, it's not the behavior. It's you grabbing hold of the promise. And by the way, grabbing hold of the promise will make you into the moral character. Where Esau devolves and becomes nasty, Jacob, by holding on to the promise, is redeemed and becomes virtuous. So that's the key. That's what God is trying to get you to understand. And that's, this whole idea of how it starts. And we're going to land the plane here. But where Esau, he comes in and he's looking at the salvation of humanity, playing a role in it, being part of it, all of God's promises stored up. It's like, these are yours, Esau. And he says, I would trade it all for a taste. A swallow is the literal word of that stew. I will take one moment's comfort and trade eternal blessing. And that is the pathway to hell.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say it. Like when Jesus tells the parable of hell where Lazarus and the rich man, right? And the rich man dies after mistreating Lazarus and living abundance and leaving Lazarus to starve to death outside of his house with boils and sickness and all that. He goes to heaven or goes to hell, sorry, and he's begging to get out of hell. What does he never do? He never apologizes to God. What is the only thing that he's asking for is, I want one drop of water to land on my tongue. He's not sorry for his sin. He doesn't care what God thinks. He doesn't care anything about what he's done to God during his life, how he's been selfish, how he's exploited people, any of his sin. He doesn't care. He just wants one drop of water on his tongue. What does Esau want?
It's one taste.
One swallow. I'll trade it all for one swallow. Imagine seeing the fulfillment of all those promises, which is Jesus on a cross, just standing in front of that, looking at the love of God, the investment of God, the promises of God, and shrugging and saying, I'll take a swallow of lentil stew. You can keep your God on a cross.
Hmm.
I mean, that's essentially what Esau's doing.
And Jesus rejected one swallow on the cross.
That's right. He wouldn't take it. That's good. Yeah. He wouldn't take it. No comfort. And he would suffer for us. And so, like, right out of the gates here, you see, here comes another lesson where God is going to make us really uncomfortable by presenting someone who's totally immoral so often, but he loves the promise against someone who seems like a good guy. Noble at times, right? But he hates the promise, and God chooses this one every time, which says, where's your salvation come from? Your faith or your works?
My faith.
Your faith. Because he's good on your behalf. He was good. He went to a cross. He clothed you in his righteousness and took away your sin. And so that's a beautiful start.
That's the start.
Right? And to Jacob, who's going to become Israel, and God is launching into a relationship with a covenantal people, and he wants you to understand crystal clear, it's not because you're good enough that he enters into covenant with you. It's because you grab hold of the promise and won't let go. And so we'll stop there. I want to thank you so much for watching. Join us next time as we go into the last chapter we'll see of Isaac, where Isaac is going to have some stumbles. It kind of shifts back to Isaac before we move ahead again with Jacob and Esau, but it is a brilliant and beautiful chapter. Join us then. God bless.